Moving to Live is a podcast about movement and exercise. We bring you interviews with professionals in the movement and exercise field. The goal is to provide information for other professionals and also amateur movement aficionados, people who understand that movement is part of what makes life complete. Some of the people we interview you will have heard of. They're well known in and outside of the movement and exercise profession. Others you may not have heard of, but they have a great deal of knowledge to share. Many people doing the best work spend their time working with people, not working on their social media presence. We're going to give you a chance to learn from some of these talented and knowledgeable individuals, and we're going to learn along with you. Moving to Live podcasts are going to be short. Each interview will be long enough to impart usable information, but short enough to be able to be consumed in a single bout, during your workout, commute, or even during dinner prep. We all like long-form interviews, but time is valuable. Moving to Live wants to give you the option to learn and be entertained without needing to commit 60 minutes at a time for an interview. Give Moving to Live a listen. Check out our sister podcast, FitLab PGH, which highlights people, businesses, events, and activities in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area that make movement a priority. Moving to Live would love to hear from you. Want to connect with us or have an idea for somebody you think we ought to interview? Drop us an email, mov2liv@gmail.com, or connect with us on Instagram and Twitter, both _MOV2LIV. We're excited to bring you these interviews, and we think you'll enjoy each and every one that we bring you. Moving to Live and our sister podcast believe that movement should be treated as a lifestyle, not just an activity. Moving to Live brings you interviews with a wide variety of movement professionals. Our goal is to break down knowledge silos and bring you information about moving better, moving more frequently, and moving in different ways. If you like what you hear, leave us some feedback via Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast app you're listening to. If you have an idea for a guest, drop us an email. Today's guest comes compliments of an introduction by Joe Bauer of the All Around Joe podcast. Check that out for another interesting podcast. Our guest today is a doctor of chiropractic medicine. In addition, she works as a CrossFit gym owner and as a CrossFit competitor. She's somebody who really takes to heart the ethos of Moving to Live, that movement is part of what makes your life complete. In this upcoming part one of the interview, we're going to find how she went from being a high school athlete in multiple sports to what she does today as a doctor of chiropractic medicine, a gym owner, and a competitor and a lifetime mover. I think you'll enjoy it. Today we are here with part one of an interview with a chiropractic physician, Dr. Karla Wolford from Moorhead, Minnesota. She has a little bit of an interesting story, I think, from chatting with her for a few minutes before I convinced her to appear on the podcast. And she's also involved is the owner of a CrossFit gym and is a CrossFit competitor. So Dr. Wolford, thanks for taking time during your lunch hour to talk to Moving to Live.
Thank you for having me.
I always start the Moving to Live interviews by asking people to tell me what's their elevator spiel or 30-second speech. So if you see somebody and you're wearing an Elevate Human Performance CrossFit or Elevate Human Performance, your chiropractic practice shirt, and somebody says, what do you do? What's your spiel? Where you explain to them, this is what I do, and possibly get them as either a client or a patient.
Well, in a world where upwards to 80% of people are overweight and unfit, we define that at Elevate Human Potential. So whether you're looking for exercise, fitness, nutrition, or whole body care, we offer that for you. We don't limit your care via your insurance. We literally go and work and treat the person. And that's what we do at EHP.
And how long has EHP been open?
Just over 4 years.
And I'm sure there's an interesting story about how you came to this point. And we always like to start at the beginning. So when you were growing up, I understand from reading your bio, you are a Minnesota native. So when you were growing up, were you active as a kid, possibly as a cross-country skier or some sort of indoor team sports?
I wish I cross-country skied when I was younger, but I was involved in all sorts of activities and sports and wanted to literally be in everything. I wanted to be good at everything. And I think that's why CrossFit suits me so well, because it's so many different things. But in high school, I played volleyball, basketball, and track. And then I played club softball in the summer. But before that, I danced, I did baton. I just loved being active. Fast forward in my life, I actually, a couple years ago, found out I actually have ADHD. I'm just not hyperactive. And so the activity actually helps me focus. And so I don't like to sit still. I like to move. And that actually helps my brain function a lot better. So after high school, I went to college at Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota. And it was a really good default school. I had plans to go play basketball at a bigger school. And I just didn't like the ones I went to look at. So they had a really good pre-med program, and graduated from there. I played volleyball and basketball, and I did track for a year as well, and got really involved in a lot of their like study abroad type programs. And I studied abroad as well. So get rid of that. And fast forward, I went to grad school at Palmer West in San Jose, California. And I really liked their sports medicine, sports chiropractic track. I went and visited like 6 different schools, and that was the one that impressed me the most. Their sports council was super active, and I said, this is where I need to be. My parents didn't love that part about me moving to the West Coast, but I'm super happy of the choice that I made there. And I was able to go do a residency at down in Temple, Texas, at the VA hospital down there. And then I finished up my preceptorship in Vail, Colorado. And in the meantime, I guess, while I was finishing up my doctorate, I went back and did my master's in sports science and rehabilitation, and liked to, with that, figure out how do I bridge rehab to performance. And that was my big project. And I did that as a strength coach at the University of Colorado. And when I finished that up, a lot of my classmates were wanting to be in hospitals, but I already did that. So I thought, what happens with these higher level athletes? Like, we take them out of chiropractic or PT, and we bring them to a level where say, hey, like, you've met your activities of daily living. Well, that's great. And that's where insurance stops paying. But these people want to perform. So their ADLs are not like everybody else's ADLs. And I wanted to be able to understand that better. So I was fortunate enough to do that at Colorado.
I'm curious, when you were growing up, were your parents or were your family also active, or was it more along the lines of, oh, you want to try all these different activities, go ahead, we'll support you?
My parents were both really active in high school and played lots of high school sports, and they were very good at them. And my dad actually played football and basketball in college. And in my hometown, it's interesting. It's a smaller hometown, and it's like the kids are supposed to be really active, and then the adults aren't as active. Whether it might be like a Wednesday night basketball league or a volleyball league, but as far as like all around fitness, that's finally just kind of hitting that my smaller town, which I'm really glad it is. But it really wasn't a thing that was stressed in my whole community. And so they were super active when they were younger, and they liked being active with me. But as far as, the regular gym goers, and they weren't like that, but they loved playing stuff with me.
And I know from reading your bio, you've participated in CrossFit at quite a high level, but you also mentioned a few minutes ago that you were potentially looking in high school of going and playing basketball at Division I, and none of those schools really fit your needs, or you liked it. So you go to another school, you play a multitude of sports. Was there at some level where you realized, I'm not going to be able to go to the next level of any one of these sports, whether it to continue to participate and maybe make it to the Olympics, or if it's in the case of something like basketball or track and field, where you can play professionally with basketball overseas and make a significant amount of money, or in track and field, you could be an air quotes amateur and still make money as a competitor?
let's rephrase. I was looking at D2 schools, never a D1. I'm 5'7", so I'm I'd be a little shorty, but I guess I was fortunate enough to play AAU with a bunch of girls that went D1. So I like to say that I helped contribute to their paths, but I guess I never really I wasn't really looking to play a sport beyond college. I had kind of thought that's where it ended. I had a realistic goal. I liked doing lots of things. I wish I would have stuck with and tried the heptathlon in college, but I just thought it was way too much work. So I apologize to my college track coaches because I pole vaulted and threw discus and triple jumped, none of which are in the heptathlon. And so I just didn't think I'd be good enough. And now I wish that I would have put 4 years into actually getting better at that. But, hindsight. And so I never really looked at sports as a means of a profession. I looked at them as a portal to vent and to use my body and also help cultivate what my brain can do. And so I definitely wanted to put, when I was 18, I was like, I'm going to pick this school because of basketball. And hindsight, I'm super happy that I picked a school that was had an incredibly high level of education. Their pre-med track graduates, I think 99% get accepted into pre-professional schools. So it's pretty intense, I will say. I actually I'm a mentor to a girl who's in a pre-professional medical track there. And I had lunch with her after her first semester. And I said, you just hang on because your first and year 2 of grad school is going to be way easier because you put the work in now. And I said, I got to grad school and I was like, oh, this is easy. And everybody else is panicking. And I really attribute that to my undergrad.
So you finished your undergrad and you majored in pre-medicine, is that correct?
Yes, I was actually a biology and exercise physiology major with a chem minor.
So how do you decide on chiropractic school from that? Because literally you could go down the line of movement and medicine and pick your graduate school that you wanted to go to, because I know Concordia is one of those liberal arts schools where you have to take so many prereqs and core requirements that if you correctly manipulate them, essentially you can go for almost anything because you've got all the prereqs.
Yeah, I actually did that. I thought right away I wanted to go into medicine. So I was a biology major with a chem minor. And second semester, my freshman year, we took a class called botany, which is the study of plants. And apparently that is not my jam. And I hated it. And I struggled and I got through it. And I changed. I was like, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. And then I went to exercise physiology. But when we were looking for classes, all the kids that were my age, all those classes were full. So my sophomore year, I had to take all the senior level courses. And when I started doing that, I realized, okay, maybe this is too easy for me. So then I got this wild idea, like, why don't I just do both? Because that's just kind of where I ended up. And I guess I had advisors that supported my craziness in wanting to do all of that. And I did the same thing in high school too. I actually petitioned to get out of a super easy class so I could take upper level physics and advanced anatomy physiology. I had to kind of beg my small school to let me do that. But I really like learning on things that are going to help convey for the future.
It sounds like we were similar in our thoughts of plant biology. My first biology class in college was plant biology and I hated it. And I knew I'd have to take at least another 2 classes. So I changed to physical education, allied health major.
I don't think you were the only one. I think a lot of people went through that.
So you graduate from college. You've got all these potentials. What was the decision to go to what made you pick chiropractic as opposed to MD, osteopathic medicine, or a graduate program in exercise science? Had you had experience with chiropractic care?
Yeah, I mean, I had experience with all of them. I actually shadowed a lot of different professionals. And like at first I thought I'm just going to be an MD. And actually one of our professors, we did hormone replacement therapy studies on rats and we did surgeries. And he would actually tell us if we have really good hands, like he'd actually try and say like, you'd be really good in like dental or surgical or trying to help us. And he was a great advisor in that role. And I was really good at that. And at that point I had gone back for a spring break, and we were off of basketball, and I went back to my hometown chiropractor who had helped me through a number of different things. And I literally I hadn't really given that much thought. But I went back and saw him, and I'm like, okay, he's super happy. He gets to work on the whole body. People aren't going to him because they want just medication. They actually want to make a real lasting change. And so for me, that was kind of like, this might be something that's really worth going into. And at the same time, one of my dad's friends from high school, who's a chiropractor, had sent me this magazine about chiropractors who had gone and basically helped with the Olympics. And I thought, okay, I've always loved the Olympic movement and what it stands for and bringing cultures together. And like you said, like I wasn't going to be an Olympic athlete, but this was one way where I could make an impact for all those other people chasing their dreams and bringing the world together in a totally different way. So that's the path I chose.
And you mentioned you looked at a number of different chiropractic schools. One of the purposes of moving to live is to break down those knowledge silos. And we've had interviewed osteopaths, MDs. We've not yet interviewed a chiropractic physician. What are the differences between chiropractic schools? I mean, why would one pick one over the other? I know in some cases with medical schools, you pick it because of the professors or because of what they specialize in, or possibly because it's the only one you get into. Is it similar in chiropractic schools?
Yeah. And when I was applying, there were 16 schools, and now there's got to be over 20 because there's a couple new ones that have popped up. With chiropractic schools, you need the prerequisites very similar to pre-med. Some schools in some states say you have to have a bachelor's degree, and some say you don't, but you're literally like 2 or 3 credits short. So I don't know why you wouldn't get one. We had one kid in my class, and he had come from the military. And so he was the only person in our class that didn't have a bachelor's. But you pretty much have to finish your tracks in order to get into a school. And yeah, I mean, the application process is very similar. The credit hours that we take in chiropractic school, actually, there was a study that came out, minus like the residency, we actually have more in-class hours than like a medical school program. And the school I went to actually had more than that. So we were super lucky. But I think for a lot of people, it's geography, like, hey, where's this school at? I'm back here in Minnesota now. And one of the reasons I wanted to go away from here was I wanted a different viewpoint. And where I went at Palmer West was super evidence-based and not very theory-based. I mean, we all learn our general principles and our hardcore sciences, but some of the other Palmer school in Davenport is a little bit more theory-based, where we're very evidence-based. So nobody wanted to come speak at our school, because if you didn't have anything to back yourself up with, the students were pretty brutal. And I didn't really understand that till I went to some other places and where it was at different seminars. But I really went out there because I really liked that aspect of it. They were hands-on day one. Where another school I looked, like they literally was like 9 months of learning before you put your hands on anybody. And I'm like, I wanted to develop that tactile feel and feel for how muscles and fascia and tissue should move and glide. And I'm a very hands-on person, so I wanted to start that day one.
So you graduate from chiropractic school and you make the decision that you're going to get a master's degree too. Why?
Yeah.
You sound like a glutton for punishment.
I think at that point in my life, I probably was. But my second professional choice would have been physical therapy. And we learned a lot of sports rehab in chiropractic school. And mind you, like, I'm not a physical therapist. I don't Like, we didn't learn anything about how do you work in a hospital setting or at home setting or post stroke or post burn. I mean, I don't know any of that, but I really wanted to dive into what's the rehab like for sports science and rehab. Like, how do I make my athletes better? And that's just the path that I chose to go down. And people move. So, I mean, people should move. And so I really wanted to be able to better incorporate some of those principles. And so it was actually a really good review of some of the exercise physiology that we did in undergrad and then kind of built off of that. So I got another really good review of all the things I learned at Concordia and then was able to kind of build off of them. And the internship was very interesting. I actually applied to be a strength coach at the University of Minnesota, and they didn't let anybody who wasn't a gopher come in. And so the University of Colorado accepted me, and they were kind of like, you have a doctorate. Why are you wanting to do an unpaid internship here? But like I said, my project was in kind of bridging that rehab to performance and understanding the barriers that need to be torn down in order for athletes to really get where they need to be and to minimize future injuries. And so I was there for about 5 days, and I had my CSCS, which is, for your listeners, a Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist certificate. And they fired somebody. And so I collected all of his teams, and I was very ill prepared. And I mean, we gained some ground. I didn't know what I was doing right away. And just being given a bunch of Division I teams, I mean, in all honesty, I was as good a replacement as they could have gotten in that moment. And I learned a ton. And I'm super grateful for all of my mentors there who really helped me understand a lot of sports that I didn't necessarily have a full grasp on how to train at an elite level. So did a lot of research, and a lot of my nose was in a lot of books to write all their programming because everything was gone. So I got a chance to work with so many of their athletes in their different sports. So it was a great semester.
I'm curious, was there ever any thought when you were doing that maybe I'll keep the doctorate of chiropractic but become a strength coach and use that in addition to it?
Yeah. There's certain aspects of it that I like really, really loved. The hardest part, I think, if I would have gone that direction, is you are there at like 5:30 in the morning and you don't leave till 8:30 or 9 at night. And that's just not quite the life for the hours that I wanted. And it's a really cool setting, and it's something I definitely think I could have done for a couple of years. But I was ready to use my treatment skills at that point after my internship.
And I'm curious, while you're doing all this schooling and then getting essentially thrown into the fire as Division I strength coach, what was your activity like? Because you come from a very regimented college environment where you're probably, from what you've described, have a sport 3 seasons out of the school year. And then in the summer, you're either preparing or doing something else. And there are some people who just love that. And when they finish their college career, they find something else, which clearly you have with CrossFit. Other people find triathlons or running or things like that. And others just say, well, I'm done. I'm never going to do it again because I'm just too regimented. I've been there. I've done that. I'm going to coach it. I'm going to teach it, but I'm never going to be that high-level athlete, even if you're a high-level amateur. So what were you doing during all the schooling, if anything?
When I first went to grad school, I think most of it was just trying to figure out how do I survive in this world. And after I was done with sports, I kind of was like, I'm over it. Like, I didn't really want to train so hard anymore. And when I got to California, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of missing something. So I started running, which, by the way, I'm not a runner. I hate running, but I do it in stride. I started running, and I would do 10Ks and half marathons. And then I joined our school's triathlon team, which was a big eye-opener for me. My first triathlon was in Berkeley, California, and they taught it as the world's toughest try. And myself and a classmate who, by the way, she was an Olympic speed skater, so she'd had some competition under her belt as well. We go to Berkeley and all these big schools are there, and they take the top 2 from each team, and you're in the top heat. Well, we only had 2 girls, so we were automatically in that heat. But we get into the pool and you have to swim like laps around it. So people are swimming on top of you. And we have like all these all-American swimmers in our heat, and it just was so not fair. And we climbed up. I mean, there's a lot of climbing and the biking. Like I literally got my bike 2 weeks before that. And I mean, I survived, and I survived to do another try and actually got pretty good at them, and worked my way up to running a marathon. And I did a half Ironman, and I honestly thought I would do the full thing. And at that point I was like, I'm over it. I just was ready to be done or have a break. And then my first couple of years of practice, I did a lot of like kind of HIIT training, or I treated a bunch of MMA fighters. So I did not understand that sport at all. And so I started taking up boxing and Muay Thai, and I just never figured out the jiu-jitsu part. I just was not good at that, but I did the other 2. So I did a lot of that. And one of my jobs took me out to Colorado, and that's where I found CrossFit. And I hadn't really been a serious competitor like leading up to that. And I did not join CrossFit to compete. I was actually scared out of my mind to do it. I don't know if you've heard of the Opta Jump, but it's a gait analysis, performance analysis device that's used at like Nike and all the Olympic training centers. But I went to do testing on some CrossFit athletes because I was curious and I was trying to network. And they said, you can come test our athletes if you come to CrossFit for 2 weeks. And I was like, no. I had just run a marathon. I'm good. And then I see this little girl who's like, she's not little, she's a smaller woman, and she's like 5 feet tall, 120 pounds. And she's whipping these weights around that they're over my 1 rep max. And I was like, what is up with this? So I got started, and honestly, there was a team-like atmosphere there that I had been missing, and I didn't even know I was missing it. And I was like, man, I really love this. And my job at that point was kind of, I just didn't love exactly what I was doing there. So I moved to Colorado, or I moved to Seattle, and of course, like, had to find a CrossFit right away. And I did, and that one wasn't quite the CrossFit for me. And we were doing some rock taping events at another one, and a gym owner asked me, hey, how much do you back squat? And I told him, which wasn't very much at that point. And he's like, hey, we're trying to get a team to go to this regional thing. You want to come train with us? And I didn't know what regionals were. I was like completely clueless, but I was like, hey, I'll give it a try. And so they literally kind of encouraged me, and kind of, they helped build me into the CrossFit athlete I am today. So with proper training and nutrition, definitely, and recovery, I gained a lot of knowledge through that.
We're talking with Dr. Karla Wolford. She is a chiropractic physician and the owner of a CrossFit gym. She's kind of told us her path. We're going to come back in 2 weeks and find out how she made the decision to open her own facility, find out a little bit more about what CrossFit is, because I know many people have the background of, they see what gets thrown up on the TV every July or August and go, that's crazy, or that's something I could never do. And also find out a little bit more about chiropractic care. So Dr. Wolford, I want to thank you for talking to Moving to Live for part 1. I'm looking forward to talking to you in part 2 of the interview and finding more about your philosophy of essentially making people move more.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of Moving to Live. Make sure you check out the show notes for contact information for our latest guest, as well as links about all the things we talked about. Intro and exit music is Traveling Light by Jason Shaw. You can subscribe to Moving to Live on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play, and be notified about new episode releases. Have any questions, comments, or suggestions? Drop us an email, mov2liv@gmail.com. Connect with us on Twitter or Instagram, both MOV2LIV. Please tell your friends about Moving to Live. It's a go-to place for information for movement and exercise professionals and amateur aficionados who understand that movement is part of what makes your life complete. Until next week, keep on moving.